I'm excited.
Karine, I mean, oh my God. So you've been out of the briefing room now for a couple of months.
Yeah.
You've been able to slow it down.
I can't believe it. I definitely been able to slow it down.
Yeah.
I said this earlier, self-care, focusing
So
on
important.
myself, my family.
Yeah.
And just having fun like this. So thank you so much for the invite. This is so much fun.
You're so welcome. You're welcome
Thank
back
you.
anytime.
Thank you.
So, as you guys know, it is Women's History Month, and this morning we are shining the spotlight on a boss lady who's broken quite a few barriers. Karine Jean-Pierre became the first Black and openly LGBTQ+ press secretary at the White House under the Biden administration, of course. She's also the longest-serving female press secretary. And Karine is joining us now to talk all about her inspiring journey and so much more. Karine, my goodness. The next chapter has begun for you.
Indeed.
I want to ask you, it's been a little over 2 months now since you gave your final briefing.
Yeah.
What was that moment like for you?
You know, it was emotional. It was a moment where I got to say goodbye in my way. And I appreciated that moment. Look, the job that I had as White House press secretary and breaking those barriers was so important to me. It is not lost on me, the shoulders that I stand on or stood on at that time to do the job. It is not lost on me and what it meant to the multiple communities that I represented. So it was emotional in that way. Yeah. And it was an honor and a privilege. I would do it again. I'm glad I'm not doing it now. Let's be very clear.
Yeah.
But it was an honor and a privilege to be the voice, the spokesperson for the most powerful person in the world, the President of the United States. Yeah. And I think at that moment on January 15th is when I held my last briefing. All of that came rushing in. Anybody who watched the briefing, it was one of the very rare moments that I got emotional, especially when I started to talk about my daughter and spending more time with her. It's a lot. These jobs are not easy. They are not easy jobs. And we do it because we are public servants and we want to do better. We want to do good.
So what have you been up to since then? What does life look like for Karine Jean-Pierre these days?
Wow. So I have been, I keep saying this because it's very true, and I'm trying to put it into existence, which is self-care, not having to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, really taking care of myself, spending more time with my family, especially my daughter. I have my first book that I wrote, which is a memoir, is coming out. The paperback version of that is coming out in May. It has a new cover. It has an afterword in it, so that comes out on May 20th. So I'm excited about pushing that forward. It's been 5 years, so it's good to get that out again. Yeah. And then I have a new book that I'm writing that's going to come out in the fall. And so it's exciting. Writing, spending time, and really refocusing on myself and my family.
I love that, and congratulations as
Thank
well
you.
on
Thank
the paperback
you.
version.
Thank you.
So I just literally listed a whole list of firsts that you have accomplished, which is so inspiring, Karine. And I want to ask you, was this little Karine's big dream to end up in the White House today, to literally have the President of the United States as your boss?
I mean, honestly, I thought I was going to be a doctor. That's what my parents wanted me to do. That was my focus. I talk about that in the memoir. And I was a shy kid. I was painfully shy. So I grew into myself, if you will. Yeah. And I always tell young people this when they ask me for advice: follow your passion, take those steps forward. Things may go up and down, but you'll go on that amazing experience. So the last 15 years of my life has been this amazing experience that I never knew, even as that little girl, that I would have had that opportunity to. And now I get to see little girls who are 8, 9 years old, who look up to me, who say, oh my gosh, I want to be you when I grow up. I want to be White House press secretary. And when I was 8, I did not know who the White House press secretary was. So representation is so important and key, and I think it's nice to give that to young girls. While
you were serving as press secretary, the 35th, by the way, did President Biden ever give you any advice that still sticks with you today?
Oh, he always, I have known Joe Biden since 2009. And the thing that I learned from him, even back then when he was vice president to Barack Obama, is to be kind to people and to treat people like your own, like fairly, and to talk to folks. He loves talking to people and being there. And I learned what patriotism looks like. I think he's like one of the last of that great generation, of that generation that cares about their country, cares about moving it forward for the betterment of the country.
Yeah. I want to ask you, you wrote an op-ed for Vanity Fair, and I found it very interesting, but also I want to thank you for being so vulnerable.
Thank you.
No one would have known what you were going through. Your mom was battling stage 2, I believe, of colon cancer.
Yep, colon cancer, yep.
You got
exactly
the text during the historic trip to Ukraine with
Yeah.
President Biden. What was it like having to hide something like that
Yeah.
for almost 2 years?
And I'm glad we're talking about this during Women's Month, because one of the things that we have to endure as women in the workforce, is we feel that we cannot be vulnerable. And you're right, that article came out after the White House, because I didn't feel safe or empowered to talk about what I was going through in my personal life. But at the same time, I wanted people to hear my voice, my story, because I wanted women to feel seen. And you're right, I'm in that sandwich community. I have a young daughter. I have two parents that are getting a little older, need a little bit more care. And I think many people out there, even watching, probably feel that and go through that. And as the White House press secretary, I was going through that. And so no one knew. No one knew, not even people who worked for me knew that I was going through it.
I can just only imagine just trying to essentially work a part-time job,
Yes.
you know,
being a
undercover
caregiver and being a healthcare advocate is tough.
Yeah, it really is. Before we let you go, though,
Yes.
you know, there's a lot going on these days, and so I do want to ask you, over the weekend, a couple of poll numbers came out. The Democratic Party reached historic lows when it came to approval ratings. So I just want to ask you, as a strategist, as an advisor, what do you think is the issue, and what does the Democratic Party need to do?
And I'm really glad you asked me this question, because I have been thinking about that a lot, and I've spoke about it a little bit in an earlier interview that I've done. And I think the Democratic Party needs to figure out who they are and what they are fighting for. And that is so key. I think people in the Democratic Party wants to see a fight. They want to see heart. They want to see that you care. And if we don't do that, if the party doesn't do that, we're not going to make those gains that we want to see happen in the future. And who are we and what are we fighting for? And so those numbers actually don't surprise me.
Do you think the Democratic Party has a leader right now? Is that still to be
determined?
determined?
I think that there are multiple wonderful leaders of the Democratic Party. They just have to speak up and lead.
All right, we'll have to see what happens with that moving forward. Make sure you get your copy. Again, be sure to follow Karine on her social media handles, and that's a good way to keep up with all that's going on in this next chapter. Karine, you have been an absolute joy this morning.
Oh,
Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy being on.
You're so welcome.